Hello, my name is Ken Adams. I'm a research professor at the Desert Research Institute in Reno, Nevada, and I mostly study quaternary geology and geomorphology out here in the Great Basin. And so in this short video, what I want to talk about is the difference between, or how do you tell the difference between pluvial lake shorelines and fault scarps here in the Great Basin. It's not always so clear, and because there are so many shoreline complexes, shoreline levels in all the different basins out here in the Great Basin, and there's lots of active faults that have Holocene ground ruptures. It's kind of useful to know how to tell them apart. And so this is a good place to talk about some of the things that differentiate the two types of features. We're standing on the Wasik Range, Piedmont, on the west side of Walker Lake. And Lake Lahontan, one of the arms, the southernmost arm of Lake Lahontan, occupied this basin where Walker Lake now sits. And there is also a very active rangefront, what am I trying to say? There's also a very active rangefront normal fault here. Mostly normal. There might be a little bit of right obliqueness to it in various parts of this rangefront. But it's mostly normal, and if I remember correctly, there's been at least 2 Holocene events. But there's also been, Lake Lahontan, like I said, was in here, and got up to a height somewhere around 1332 meters or so, 1330 meters, which is way above us on this range front. But there's also been Holocene lake level fluctuations in this basin, and I'll show you I'll pan around and show you some of the views that I'm looking at here in a minute. And so we can kind of start also differentiating the age of these fans based on how they're interacting, the cross-cutting relationships with the Holocene stack of shorelines and also the late Pleistocene stack. And that's going to give us a sense of also the age of some of these fault scarps as well, because these faults are interacting with the shorelines, they're interacting with the alluvial fans. So let's have a look. So here we are on this range front, and you see this beautiful fault scarp in front of us. But how do we know it's a fault scarp? And so when I'm saying it's a fault scarp, it's this thing right there that my finger's going along. Okay? And so one of the characteristics that you can almost always rely on is that shorelines form in a horizontal fashion, at least within sort of a vertical band of a meter or two, depending on wave activity, sometimes up to 3 meters natural variability on the heights of shorelines. But when you're looking at them from a distance on a range front, the base of them are almost always horizontal. Fault scarps, on the other hand, don't follow this horizontal rule. They can propagate and across the landscape up and down slopes. And so this particular fault scarp, this one right there, is going down slope towards where my truck is parked down there. And we can zoom in. Okay. And so because it's not horizontal, the base of that feature, that must be a fault scarp. And it also looks like a fault scarp. So there's a big bluff behind that, a very bouldery bluff, which is sort of from here up to this thing right there. And is that a fault scarp, or is that some sort of shoreline cliff feature? Well, you can't really see the shorelines on the face of that bluff. It's sort of a flat-topped, not really flat, but sloping towards the lake bench up on top of it. But on the LiDAR data that covers this range front, you can very clearly see shorelines on the face of that big slope. And so there are definitely, it's been wave modified, that deposit, and it may have started out as an alluvial fan, but the waves have the water's transgressed over the top of that, and waves have worked that surface and made some fairly subtle shoreline features in it. And so, but what about the relief of that face? It's possible that that is a much larger sort of scarp, fault scarp that's been, that represents many multiple offsets, but also it's been wave modified. So it is sort of in that class of the dreaded wave modified fault scarp, which makes them oftentimes difficult to differentiate one from another, because in this particular case it's probably both. But the Holocene fault scarp that you see out in front, the one that I was talking about earlier that you can still see, that thing is very clearly not horizontal. It arcs up over the apex of this alluvial fan, and down the other side it shows up very well, very clearly in the LiDAR data. And those are a few things that differentiate fault scarps and shorelines.